Right, hello everyone. Thank you for joining so punctually. Let's get started. So, very warm welcome on behalf of Angel Academe. I'm Sarah Turner. I'm co-founder and CEO, along with Simon Hopkins, who's our COO, and Michelle is also on the call. Michelle's our network manager. Those of you who know us well will know that we're supported by a very engaged community. We have an advisory board. We have a large number of members, some of whom you'll hear from today. We have screeners and we have sector experts within that group as well. And we're also very lucky to be supported by some fantastic sponsors who bring expertise in law, tax advice, accountancy, talent and recruitment, marketing, and banking. So it does feel like we just run events sometimes, but actually we're a very active investor network. So at any one time, we'll be reviewing hundreds of opportunities that apply to pitch to us. Doing due diligence on current investment opportunities that have made it through our screening and selection process. So we're normally looking at 3 and possibly more deals at any one time. And of course, we'll be supporting the founders that we've already backed. And I use the we collectively. It's not just us at Angel Academe that are active, but our investors too. It is what angel investors do. So far, our members have invested in 35 startups and in more than 50 investment rounds. Collectively, those businesses have raised over £60 million between them, not just from angels, but many have gone on or raised venture capital money alongside. They've created hundreds of high-skilled jobs, both for women and men, and are generating multiple millions in revenues. Many of them are mission as well as profit driven. You absolutely can be both. So we use chat to engage with you directly and for you to submit your questions as usual. And as per tradition, we kick off by asking how everyone is feeling. So if you could tell us now in chat, on a scale of 1 to 5, where 5 is optimistic, how are you feeling now? I know there's just been this horrendous downpour if you're in London, so well, good to see some nice high numbers despite the disappointing May weather. We got lots of 5s, we got lots of 4s. Wonderful. And we always ask a poll question in these sessions. You know, previously we asked you to let us know what stage you prefer to invest at, and what sectors that you're currently looking at. In terms of stage, the answer came back loud and clear that people are investing in companies that have built their product and are starting to show some early revenue, right through to recurring revenue. Sectors, very much in our areas of focus. So strong interest in fintech, in health tech, in ed tech, clean technology, security and privacy, always very popular. And there seems to be a strong preference for B2B business models. Today's question, we'd like to know what skills or knowledge relating to angel investing you feel like you need to develop. If you're a very experienced investor, please do put none. That's absolutely fine. Option 2 is what kind of questions you should be asking to do financial due diligence in an early stage opportunity. 3, same question, but looking at tech. 4, sector knowledge. This could be health tech, fintech, whatever. Or if it's none of the above, please give us an example. I've seen somebody's put term sheets. I'll come back to that later. Great. Okay, and we'll share the results at next month's event. Thank you very much. So just a little bit of scene setting, just to remind everybody that our members are gradually building portfolios of angel investments as part of a diversified overall investment strategy. Most of us have extremely busy day jobs. Some have caring responsibilities on top of that. So our due diligence process is structured both to leverage the amazing skills and experience of the group, but also to make it efficient. And that's both for investors as well as founders. Our previous Investor Academy session was on due diligence, and there's a recording of that in the YouTube channel. There's also a recording of our partners at Hayes McIntyre talking about what to look for in term sheets and on the legals. So just have a look at our YouTube channel, play that, and then if that doesn't answer all your questions, let us know. So just a word up front just about our deal leads. So, you know, they coordinate due diligence, they don't do it all. Very often you'll have noticed if you've been on a deal team, we pair people up. So you may have 2 deal leads, and that helps encourage new deal leads to come forward. Deal leads aren't expected to know everything about everything. So if either you as the deal lead or your team lack any particular expertise, we can find it in the network. We've got lots of sector experts, we've got lots of experienced investors, we've got lots of people who can review legal documents. Leading a team is a great opportunity to learn, build relationships, both with founders and with other investors in the network and outside our network, and also to develop your own value as an investor. And you know, we're all trying to support entrepreneurs, but if you lead, it's lending additional support to them. As anyone who's been through the process will know, fundraising is long and grueling for them. They'll all tell you that, and that's even if everything goes right. Right, I'm really delighted to introduce you to 3 of our members this afternoon. All are very experienced angel investors, all have led several deals with us. What we've asked each of them to do is to introduce themselves and then talk for about 5 minutes to share some of their insights. And we're going to kick off with Alex. So Alex, would you like to come to the stage and share your wonderful insights?
Thank you, Sarah. It feels incredibly rude in this setting to go before the ladies, but this is what happened, so I'm going to go for it. So just as a bit of background, I came from the listed equity space, so equity research, later portfolio management, again in the usual kind of names, if you think the Amazon, Johnson & Johnsons and the likes. So at some stage, I wanted to look at more exciting, faster growth names. So by 2015, which is now roughly 6 years ago, I started looking into the startup universe and went to a fair few events and to somehow ended up with Angel Academe at some stage in 2016. But I mean, to echo a bit what Sarah was saying earlier, the reason why the Angel Academe approach stuck with me was because it's this constructive approach, that there is a very strong hive mind, and that someone somewhere in the network will know, will have a relevant expertise. But that doesn't mean that it's not a very professional network where when we do the due diligence, we make sure that we tick the boxes. And that is very relevant, especially if by yourself you sometimes feel overwhelmed by the whole magnitude of the due diligence process. Being in a team that holds each other to some extent responsible is a very good way of making sure that you've thought it through before committing your money. And so how did I ended up in leading? I mean, realistically, it was that I ticked the wrong box on this screening feedback point. Was I liked the investment, I would consider leading the investment. So I ticked this box and thought, what's the worst that was going to happen? Next thing I knew, I was getting all those emails about how to lead a deal. To start off, I did not complete that deal, but I got a very good taste of what it was like. First of all, I got to meet fantastic, talented co-lead, Zaya, who's now running her own company, but also learned a lot about health tech. But for better or worse, realized that it's not an industry that I can build up enough comfort to invest in. So what are the 5 points that I want to bring across at this stage? So first of all, as I was trying to show with this example, it's not a sell-side service. So by committing to be the deal lead, that does not mean that you have to deliver to a client standard. And if you don't, everyone is entitled to shout at you. No, you're the coordinator of other people interested in the team. You bring them together. You make sure that the process stays on track. You communicate with the founder. And in this process, you have very good access to everyone who's involved. Which brings me to the second point. I always thought it's a perk speaking to the people who are actually doing the work and who can explain the business model. It's a perk as a deal lead. You're involved in all the work streams, so you hear about everything from the technology that's involved to the competitive field to obviously understanding the dynamics of the deal team. And I saw that in the chats, you get involved in the legals if you want to. Well, you obviously have to some extent, but it's not your ultimate responsibility. The thing that I cannot reiterate strongly enough, it's that you are the one among equal angel investors. So it's not you who issue the final investment recommendations. It is every person on the team for themselves, and therefore it is a very cooperative dynamic. So the next aspect that I want to touch on is that it's a very good learning experience. So that if you're saying you want to learn more about the legals, you can spend more time on the legals. If you want to learn more about an industry, you can learn more about the industry. But last but not least, you don't have to. If you say it's fintech and process is my expertise, and I want to add that that's also possible. And then last but not least, there are fantastic co-leads out there, and I've been privileged to work with several of them, most recently with Kanika and Chris, and it's fantastic what you can learn from them, and lean on them. So highly recommended.
Thank you very much, Alex, and thank you for keeping to time. We heard your timer go off. That was brilliant.
Yeah, it's too noisy.
Next up is Jodie. Over to you.
Yeah, here I am. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Alex. I'm so glad that you ticked the wrong box on the feedback form. I can't say I did the same. I actually, fully willingly agreed to become a deal lead, and and I think I'm the better for it. So, I've been investing with Angel Academe for about it must be 3 or so years now, and I had been in a similar group in Australia before that, and you know, I really loved the collaborative process. I hadn't been an investor before, I hadn't really been in the space. So I really benefited from the deal leads on the early deal teams that I was on. So it's, you know, it's been part of an ongoing education. So partly that's why I'm here today and doing, you know, actually currently deal leading. So, and prior to being an angel investor, or actually alongside that, I'm also another, you know, just various kinds of investments, property, funds, that kind of thing, that I look after. And I've also got some philanthropic activities. So we have a family foundation that I look after. And before that, I was a journalist and a software developer. So I've kind of rolled all those things up into one, I think, in angel investing. And I'm also on the advisory board for Angel Academe and help with some of their content creation. So some of the stuff that you'll read was from me. So for my insights into being a deal lead, so yeah, I figure it's the next step. So if you want to progress in anything that you do, which I think is kind of natural for most of us, so you know, you become an observer. You might then get involved in due diligence on a couple of deals, and I think once you've done that and completed a couple of deals, that's probably when somebody like Sarah is going to ask if you're interested in becoming a lead, and that's probably the time, I think, to step up and give it a try. So for me, it's part of just, you know, progressing in whatever I do. So that's quite satisfying. I always try to be an inspiration to others. So I do actually, you know, because I've got so much out of this process, I actually do recommend it to others. So I think it just does help demystify the whole investment environment if you haven't been in it before, and that's a lot of what Angel Academe is here for. So, and I also quite like helping co-leads if they haven't done it before. It's always exciting to have somebody sort of come along in your sidecar, so to speak, and then also to learn from you know, some really experienced co-leads. So a shout out to John, who's on the call. We're leading on Yo at the moment, and it's also a way to help the people on the deal team feel comfortable, so that everyone gets more out of the process. A little bit about similar to what Alex said, it's great to just have that front row seat. It's like a perk, it's a real privilege. You're across pretty much everything that's going on in the due diligence. You're across it. You don't have to be deeply involved, but it is a privileged position to sort of, you know, have those conversations with the founders. You know, quite important stuff, setting the terms. You can change, you can negotiate, you know, sometimes. And I think it helps you make a more informed investment decision. So it's a positive from that aspect. And I think I keep going back for more. I think I learn something every time. Every deal is different. You know, sometimes, well, COVID really changed a lot of deals that were in process. They might have paused and restarted and looked a lot different. A lot of them did look different when they restarted. Businesses might have pivoted. It's actually really interesting to see, you know, up close how businesses handled those kinds of situations. But basically, you know, it's something new every time. So you learn something every time, which is good, keeps it interesting. And then I think Sarah touched on that as well about the network. You know, I get a lot out of working with people. So it's good to meet people and invest together, but I quite like to, you know, do that work together and get to know someone that way. So it's a good way to sort of strengthen your networks and really get to know people that you might not otherwise have the opportunity to. And that goes for the deal team members, it goes for the founders and the people working in the business, but also your co-investors that are outside of Angel Academe. So it's good to sort of meet those people who are interested in the same kinds of businesses that you are, and you know, it just leads to connections, which lead to more connections, and good things come from that. So that's about all from me for now, and I'll hand it over back to Sarah.
Thank you very much, Jodie. That's wonderful. And last but not least, it's over to Emma.
Great, thanks very much. Hi, everybody. So just to give you a little bit of background on my story. So I met Sarah about 4 years ago, I think now, and I've been in the tech sector since I was about 20. I run the international business for a big software company, and have always been in that sort of space. Historically, with the investments that I'd made, I'd always invested in property, sort of considered to be a bit of a safe haven, and then met Sarah through a mutual contact of ours, and we talked about sort of the investment side of things. And I was on the mailing list for a while before I made my first investment, which was in Enterprise Alumni. And the first investment I made was down to the fact that it was something that I knew something about. So the thing that tickled my interest with Enterprise Alumni was the fact that they had got SAP at the time to resell their product. And I was working for SAP, and I knew how hard that must have been. So I got quite interested at that point, met with Emma Sinclair, made my first investment, and that was really the first sort of toe in the water. And then since then, through some other things that I've had going on, you know, I've made a series of investments, and I'm actually now up to 8 investments through Angel Academe and through other networks as well. So started to do a bit more and try and diversify the portfolio. So I've got a few insights on here, which are just things that I've seen when I've talked to people about perhaps not deal leading, and some of the myths and legends that are around being a deal lead. So my first insight really is, just because you lead doesn't mean that you're committed. So I think there is a little bit of reticence for people to deal lead, because they feel that the minute that they put their hand up to coordinate the activity, that means that it's cast in stone if they're committed, or that they have to feel that they're putting the most in, and that's actually just not true. I've worked with a couple of deal leads who actually, when we've got to term sheets, they've decided, because of experiences that they've had potentially, that they're not happy with what's happened around the term sheet, so they've decided to not invest. And I think, so my first insight is really around, just because you're the deal lead, you're still going through your own due diligence, like we all are as part of the deal team, and you can still make your own decision. And I think that's one of the great things about having more than one person in the deal lead situation, so you can make that independent decision. So that's my first insight. The second one really is around, people ask it when they're ready to deal lead, and I think just put your hand up for something that you feel excited about. You don't have to be the expert in that particular area. Although the first deal that I led actually was Nuggets, because it was a software company in identity, which was something that I knew something about. But do something that you're excited about. And particularly for Forte, that was one that I invested in because I just really liked the story, and I liked the thing that they were trying to solve, and their purpose that they had. So I think that gets you excited about the opportunity and makes leading a deal a lot easier. I know that Alex and Jodie have talked to this point around leading. There is a perception that it's a lot more work. In theory, everybody's got to go through their own due diligence. So there really should only be the overhead of coordination that's required, and talking with the founder to coordinate some activities. It shouldn't be a massive overhead, the difference between sort of leading and doing your own due diligence. So there's a bit of a myth around it being a lot of extra work. I'm not sure that it is, apart from the coordination piece. Quite often we hear from people that they feel like they can't do it because they've got imposter syndrome. They're not experienced enough to lead. I think one of the great things about Angel Academe and the community is the fact that everybody's in their own swim lane in terms of expertise and knowledge. And the sharing of that knowledge is something that makes investing through Angel Academe quite powerful. So you don't need to be an expert in everything, because there are other people that can help you with things that you don't know. And again, as the lead, you'll have your own swim lane. So for me, as a technology person, my swim lane is usually commercials and tech. Financials and architecture I leave to other people. So I think you'll never be fully ready. So I think just dive straight in. I think it's a great way to learn, as I know Alex and Jodie have both said as well. And finally, one of the things I've found just amazing is just getting closer to the network. So both to the founders, to the community around those founders, and then also the angels themselves as well. We've got such an amazing network, Angel Academe, and being the deal lead means that you just get to know people that little bit, you get that little bit closer, a bit more into the network, and I found that to be great. So they're my insights.
Thanks, Emma. That's great. I'm going to hand over at this point to Simon, who's going to chair our panel and invite the other panelists to come back on screen as well, so we can see all of you. Wonderful.
Great stuff. Thanks, Sarah. Well, firstly, Alex, I'm glad you fell into the trap of our deliberately ambiguous form. That was pure entrapment. So that's how we work here, clearly. But sorry about that. Right. Do you all want to put your mics on so we can hear you? That would be great. Fabulous. Well, look, thanks. So we've already gone right down into the weeds on this stuff. So it'd be great to sort of peel back for a second and just, I'm going to ask, and I don't care who takes this one, you can all take it, but just give me a quick overview of what you think the deal lead role is for Angel Academe. Emma, why don't you take that?
Yeah, so I was thinking about this earlier around, if we're all doing our own due diligence, what is there left? So there is the coordination piece, making sure that everybody knows which swim lane they're in, the aspects that we're doing due diligence on. And I think actually we've, Sarah and the team have done a great job of putting some structure together around that. So almost it's a case of just reading the checklist off and just making sure that people have all got their own actions to follow. But I think one of the other key things about being a deal lead is being able to call it a day. So we do have some situations where the due diligence can go on a little bit, and it's tiring for the founders, and I think also you can lose a little bit of the shine for the investors as well. So being able to make reasonable decisions on how much due diligence is done, questions are answered, that people have enough information to be comfortable, and then drawing the line. So probably feeling comfortable in that position and working with yourself and Sarah on that, I think is probably another key part of being a deal lead.
Okay, thanks. Alex, Jodie, any further sort of high level definitions of the role?
I see my role as deal lead. It's like a buffer between the deal team and the founders. So again, to Emma's point about, the founders can get quite tired at this point, particularly at the end of a drawn out DD or fundraising process. So they're trying to run their business as well. They're trying to be as open as possible with all these investors. So I try to be a buffer. I try to keep it as high level as possible while still getting the information that we want and not overdo the due diligence, if you like. So just to get enough that our team is going to be comfortable to make the decision to invest and not invest. So and just to keep the pressure off a little bit of the founder if possible.
So how do you know what's the line? What are the
You'll get a feeling from the founders. That's my experience. Is there'll be they might have been previously very open and ready to give you everything, and then they might kind of say, well, gee, I thought we'd already covered that, or there'll just be a slight change in the temperature. And it's a good, but I think as a lead, you should sort of have a view on that as well. Like you should be keeping tabs on that yourself, maybe before the founder has enough. But yeah, it's just, at some point, but at the same time, we're all putting our hard-earned cash into these businesses. So it's a two-way street. So it's tricky. And I think that's the job of the deal lead, is to work out where that balance lies for each deal.
Yeah, I think there's also a tendency to create a false sense of security by gathering more and more data, because the game we're in angel investment is by definition that there is no visibility. I mean, they have a sense where they're going, they have a sense how much it's going to cost and when they may or may not sign up a client, but it's a different projection than in the traditional business forecasting. So I think at some stage, just to accept a level of insecurity that is just nature of the business, but also then having ticked off all the, let's call it the silly mistakes that you could make that could get you in trouble, that where a customer could just sue you in year one, or HMRC pulls back the EIS qualifications. It's those kind of items. But different investors have a different appetite. Different networks have different appetites, how far they want to go. And I think it's, as Emma and Jodie said, there's also feeling for how much the founder is willing to give.
So that's interesting, Alex, just picking up on that point. So from your point of view, having led a deal, how do you get a feel for which investors are the kind of really wanting to get stuck down in the weeds, and which investors are like, they'll kind of follow and maybe just come in very, very lightly?
Yes, especially obviously people like myself who come from a professional experience where we've got a lot of data available, we've got a lot of forecasts available, and there's what I call the availability trap, and you carry this habit into other investment profiles as well. So there is then the point where everyone has to decide for themselves if where the group has taken it to, they're comfortable with putting their money in. It's as was said here before, you get the sense from the interaction with the founder, whether this is a point where they don't know themselves, and this is where we cannot expect to unearth the answer. If sometimes there is no answer, sometimes we just have to say, this is a risk we're happy to take, or this is a risk that we need to know more about and we need to dig further into. And if the founder is no longer happy to cooperate on that level, then we've got an answer of sorts. And yeah, it's a level of insecurity that people have to live with. That's also why the returns are so much higher when it goes right.
Of course, yeah. Okay, so what about time commitment? I think, was it Jodie, you, or maybe Emma, you talked about a 10% extra time commitment, but let's try to put some rough figures around that. How arduous is this? How much time does it take to be a deal if you don't want to buy deals?
Yeah, I do think I think some of us have slightly different styles about sort of how we deal lead. I think I learned the hard way, I think, with Forte, which Simon and I were joking about the other day, where we both turned up for a call with Forte when we were in the middle of DD, and we were the only two people who turned up with the founder after we'd doodle polled everybody and found a time that was suitable, and then there was only two of us on it, I think. You know, I think you have to set yourself up for success around the DD. You know, try not to get yourself tied up in diary knots. So either you do things via doodle poll, or you set some time aside and you have some regular cadence calls. If you get yourself organized around the regular cadence calls, you know, a couple of calls with the founders, a couple of calls with the angels, to make sure you're following up on the points. You've got good notes written up and actions. You can move through the DD quite quickly if the team are organized and with you. So, you know, and you still have to read all the stuff yourself. You know, you've got to get on and do the calls and understand it if you're going to invest. So I think if you get yourself organized, I think it's probably a 10% overhead with some extra conversations with the founders.
So, and this is to all of you then, so just to put some kind of rough figures on that, how you know, I'm being asked this question by founders all the time, right? But how long does the DD process take typically? You know, what's the rough figure there? Jodie.
Yeah. Well, this is one of those how long is it string questions that to give, like, just so that people can put some parameters around it. So look, I think you know, duration wise, anything can happen, but let's say 6 weeks is probably short. So it might take longer than that. I think Ros said on another one of these, you know, 3 months. She just said it takes 3 months.
Yeah.
So that can happen too. In terms of how much time you'll need to spend during that process, I'd give it, say, between 4 and 8 hours a week. You know, that's probably, if you're a deal lead, it might be a bit more than that. 4 is probably on the light side. But I find that once I start getting into the data room, you know, some of those documents in there are pretty big, and you do sort of dive deep sometimes. So you might lose an hour without knowing. And to me, you're in flow then, aren't you? Like, you're actually enjoying what you're doing and learning, and you know, just making decisions as you're reading through about what the business is like. So yeah, that's going to be my answer. Say 4 to 8 hours a week, 6 weeks plus.
I like it. That's a specific figure. That works.
Oh, so you asked for one, right?
No, it's good. Actually, Sarah's just pointed out to me in the private chat that, you know, we are often waiting for other co-investors
during that time
to do their own DD. So it's not always on us. But so let's talk a bit about sort of ongoing commitment from your experience of the investments you've made and where you've been a deal lead. What's your ongoing involvement? And does that, you know, is that necessarily greater because you've been a deal lead? Alex?
Well, yeah, in my case, the ongoing commitment is that I ended up joining the board in the last deal. So that is a very tangible ongoing commitment, but it's not too dissimilar from the traditional tragedy of angel investing, where the founder is very keen on us until Series A comes along. So I would say the deal lead will remain the point person in the interaction with the founder and the coordination between the different investors. But that's not a formal requirement. That is just almost by definition, you've identified yourself as the person with the highest enthusiasm. So if you decided not to invest, there will not be any ongoing commitment in there. But I would say, seeing it from both sides, I would see the deal lead as the natural point of contact even after the transaction.
Emma, Jodie, any reflections on that from your experience?
Yeah, I think it depends as well on how the deal's structured. So with Nuggets, we have a nominee structure. So there's a bit of extra admin that goes on around the sort of nominee structure. So, you know, in that case, but also it depends on the founders. And I think, to Alex's point, it depends on where they are in the cycle that they're in. You know, there is a lot of opportunity to, you know, consult, you know, be advisory, you know, board commitments, those sorts of things. But if we're talking about just the pure angel side of things, you know, quite often you've got close to the founders anyway, and they're using you as a bit of a sounding board. And, you know, if you decided to deal lead, you're probably enjoying that in the first place. So I think you can then sort of ebb and flow as you need to. Yeah, it just depends on the founders, really, on, you know, how much interaction they want. Some founders want a lot of assistance and help because it's free consultancy if they're not paying for it.
Yeah, that's very true. I often say to founders when they ask me about how much involvement do we expect, I would say, well, how much involvement do you expect? But so I got a really juicy question in here from Tracy, from Hannah, who asks, have you ever experienced conflict among the deal team members in which you are leading? And I'm going to add on to that is, like, how do you resolve that if you can? Jodie, do you want to?
I'm thinking whether I have. Not really. I haven't really experienced that, but I would say all opinions are welcome. So when we have our calls, people don't agree on whether a certain factor is a problem or not. That's fine. We just air both sides of the argument. But I think what would end up happening is, you know, there's probably going to be a for and against, and I'd say the against the investor is maybe going to bow out or go in for a lesser amount or something like that. But everybody's pretty professional and respectful, and you know, it's not groupthink, but there often is an alignment in what people think is something is a red flag. Yep. So I haven't personally had to deal with that.
Alex, Emma, have you had to resolve issues?
I think sometimes you have to be the referee between the investors and the founder, you know, on contentious issues. There was one deal that I was leading where right at the death, at the point where we were signing, something came up which, you know, we had many people in the deal team that were not happy about. And, you know, very quickly we had to get to a decision around, you know, similar to what Jodie said, which was everybody aired their concerns, and then individually everybody had to make the decision whether they were in or out based on that point. So I've not experienced necessarily any conflict in the deal team, because as Jodie said, it's an open environment for you to have that conversation, but sometimes you do need to referee with the founders, because again, you know, they get a bit tired and they're a bit at the end of the road by the time you're signing. So
do you feel sometimes that you're this uncomfortable in this uncomfortable sort of mediating position between the founder and the investor group? Does that happen?
I think it's more the fact that you know, most of the founders that we're talking to, they've not done that many rounds of investment, so they're not experienced in, you know, as we, you know, if we've done sort of 6, 7, 8 investments or more than that, you know, we've been through the mill a few times, we've seen a few companies, the ones we've invested in, the ones we haven't. Whereas, you know, they only have a small sample size of data, which is just the ones when they've been for investment. So, you know, quite often some of the things that we bring up as experienced investors, they've just not seen before. So, you know, some of the things that are in the term sheets, perhaps the way that they communicate, things that they've missed out, the way they represent their financials. So there's a bit of, whether we call it mediation or a bit of education around, look, this is what the investors are looking to see, and this is why. You know, sometimes there is a little bit of explaining to do there.
Sure. Okay. So what about some of the other challenges of leading a deal? We talked about all the lovely benefits. Where's it hard? How's it get hard? Alex?
Yeah, it's obviously keeping the momentum going on both sides. Sometimes it's the investors that take more time. Sometimes it's also the companies. And as it just has come up, sometimes it's also other networks that that hold up the process. It can be hard in the final negotiations. Some people have been asking about term sheets and shareholder agreement. If we come in at the stage early enough where we still have the leverage to negotiate those terms, which is by no means always the case, then obviously we have to address those points. And it's a very sensitive topic because overall it's a very cooperative, constructive process. And then having to say, look, we think you should cut salary or whatever aspect we have identified in the process. Those things are not within the culture of the overall process. So they feel quite uncomfortable. And also obviously keeping the whole process going in the detail and making sure that, as Emma, I liked Emma's expression, keeping everyone in their swim lane.
I like that.
And everyone to the same standard of analysis, nudging some team members who are very keen, but for whatever reason may not be able to contribute at the same rate as everyone else or as they had thought they could be. So those are the tricky ones, but it's nowhere near as tricky as in a professional environment where you as a team have to come up to a consensual agreement.
So it's a tricky one, but do you ever find you're in a situation, this is obviously open to all of you, as a deal lead, where someone or someone's in the group might have an issue they want to press on the founder, a red flag, say, where actually you don't think it's a thing, you know, you're comfortable with whatever it is, but you have to channel that. How uncomfortable can that get? Jodie?
Well, yeah, it can get uncomfortable, I would say, yes. And you're managing, you know, you're managing the founder and you're managing the deal team who are multiple people with various ideas about what's a red flag and what's not. I tend to think that when that situation arises, it comes down to like what is the expertise of the person who has got the issue, and you know, how well have they expressed their position and how logical. A lot of this stuff to me just comes down to logic. It's like, well, yeah, I see what you're saying there. I think we should worry about that. Or, well, yeah, maybe, but maybe not. You know, so I feel like it might just depend on who the person is that's raising the issue with the founder. And, you know, to me, that's just group dynamics. There's always a bit of that going on, and you know, individual people in the group make their own judgment about the ability of others. And you know, I think in our groups everybody's a professional and everybody's got some sort of expertise, and so the level is usually really high. So it doesn't happen all that often, but occasionally you'll get an investor who is just on a completely different wavelength and has got the business completely wrong, you know, just hasn't sort of understood what it's about or fundamentally what they're trying to achieve. So usually those people they'll drop off fairly early on. So it's not a big deal, but you know, you try to play both sides of the fence sometimes, which can be difficult. Yeah.
Okay, great. So we got a question in from Ian, which is actually not specifically around deal leading, but it's the broader DD process. Which is that do we at Angel Academy ever lead around? Do we draft terms, negotiate valuation, and so on? And that's open to you all.
I think we're always negotiating valuation. I think that's just part of what we're doing. And one of the deals I was involved with recently, actually, the valuation was the killer in the end, and you know the deal collapsed because of the valuation. So I think we're always, you know, that's a big part of the DDs. You know, we're trying to understand, how did they come up with the valuation they came up with? How comfortable do we feel with their maths? You know, where do we see the valuation going? So I think we're always negotiating that point. I think on the draft terms as well, I don't think there's been any deal that I've been involved with where we haven't added terms to the contract in some shape or form, because we all, you know, again, because we've got experienced investors, they have terms that they feel more comfortable with, and it becomes muscle memory in the end, that if you haven't got certain terms in the contracts, then we're wondering why they aren't in there, and you're always looking for the same things. I haven't been involved where we've been leading around. I don't know if somebody else has got a...
Well, actually, Jodie, didn't we led on higher stakes, didn't we?
Yeah, by default.
Well, lessons from that. By default.
Yes. So we were a small player really in that deal, and the big player dropped out at literally the 11th hour, and so we picked up the pieces and moved on. And you know, and I was leading for some of that, and I learned a hell of a lot, and I was spending more than 4 to 8 hours a week on it. And it was a fascinating process, actually. And it was hard, but I really enjoyed it, and it was a positive experience because the founder, she was really willing to negotiate, and she was fair, and we respected each other's positions, and I think we also respected that each other hadn't done this before, really, and so we were just, you know, making the best of it, and it was a good outcome in the end.
Good.
I think it depends, like always, on the bargaining power that you have, and the level of, let's call it, justification of the point that you're trying to make. If you're Angel Academe, possibly with together with other angel networks, is the leading investor, you have a completely different bargaining power than you would have if you're coming in with 50,000 in a round that is meant to be $1.5 million. Then they would still listen to any point that you're making, but obviously it's the dynamics are very different. So that is a very soft skill, more an art than a science on that level. But I'd say I'd agree with Emma and Jodie that it's we always have an opinion, and I mean that's our job.
So Alex, while you're on then, how do you, notwithstanding being obviously entrapped into leading a deal, but in all seriousness, how do you know when you're ready?
Well, there are two approaches, and the one is like they do in business school, that there is an attraction to learn something that you feel that you want, a skill that you want to develop, and so be it in industry, or you want to develop a new skill, or you just feel like in the past I've always helped with the marketing or the finance, and now I want to have the comprehensive picture of what a deal is like, and feel like I'm actually taking ownership. That's one approach, and I respect that. It didn't work for me, and I'm more in line with Emma's point that when I see, yes, I feel like I can add. I intuitively understand what the pain point that this company is trying to address, and I feel like I could add value to the company, not only along the deal leading process, but possibly afterwards, be it through my network, be it that I'm bringing more technical skills to the discussions. That is a very strong plus for me. So in my case, I've been in the financial services sector for now over 20 years. So whatever I know that banks have very inefficient processes. So seeing businesses that address these processes, ideally in an automated way, is immediately something that attracts me.
Okay, Jodie, Emma, any thoughts on when you know you're ready to lead?
Okay, so for me, I'm less of the specialist. So I think there's another way to decide when to lead, and for me, it's more about your investor experience. So have you been through the process of due diligence a couple of times? And I think as well, you want to have closed a deal a couple, like, gone through to completion and invested. So by the time you've done that, you've probably been on a due diligence team, maybe 4 or 5 times, because you might have dropped out previously. So I just feel like having been through that process is probably enough to do that project management aspect of the deal lead. And that's probably where my skills come in more than, and network contacts and that kind of thing. But I'm not a specific, expert in a particular industry. So I don't put my hand up when I see, a particular type of business come along. So I think you could probably say there's both kinds.
Well, no, that's interesting. I was going to ask about the sector or sector expertise, and this is open to all of you, but, in terms of leading a deal, how closely do you feel you need to be aligned with a sector to lead a deal?
I don't think you have to be. I mean, I think it depends. Like, going back to what we were just talking about, you can either do it because you're experienced as an investor or experienced in the subject, or you just feel passion for the cause, So I led Forte just because I liked their story. I liked, why they invented the device that they invented, what they were trying to solve in terms of, patient care. I liked Giovanna as a founder. I thought that she was, very passionate about what, the process that she was going through and what she was trying to achieve. I didn't know anything about, medical devices or absolutely zero.
Specifically about urine collection, that wasn't.
Absolutely. I've learned more about urine than I ever cared to know. However, it was a really enjoyable process because, Giovanna's great, and And again, you get to learn something about, how the NHS procure products, and, and again, I think it goes back to what Jodie was saying about the learning experience. It was just great to be on that journey. And interestingly, I probably get more connections for Giovanna than I do for anything else, considering I'm not even in that industry. So, yeah, I think if you're passionate about it, you could do it anyway, even if you don't feel that you've got specific expertise.
Okay, so specific question then. How many members are in a typical deal team?
I'd say sort of 10 to 15 is the experience that I've seen, with the exception of Enterprise Alumni, because that was a slightly bigger opportunity.
Sure. And then building on that and open to all, what can those deal team members do to help you as the lead?
They can engage in the process. That's the biggest help, is respond to the emails, offer up times they can meet, just a lot of that is just the logistics. It can be a bit pesky. So if you're dealing with 10 to 15 people, it's really helpful if people just do respond and put in their availabilities and what they're thinking.
Honestly, Jodie, that wasn't planted, but I'll line them up. You knock them in.
Thank you.
Alex, Emma, anything to end up on there about what you need from deal team members as a lead?
I think they just need to be realistic about their commitments in time. I think the way that we're running deals now, where we do have these sort of swim lanes and expertise areas, I found the last process I went through, whilst the deal didn't go through, actually it was great, because everybody took the actions that they needed to take. Everybody added something to the deal team. The process was super efficient. I think the deal lead in Dan was, he was excellent. He was very, very good. We were sort of through due diligence in 3 to 4 weeks, which was great. And that's because everybody took the actions and cracked on and provided that back to the team. So, so I think that's, again, to Jodie's point, I think just engaging and knowing that you're going to have to be part of the DD anyway for yourself. Why not share your knowledge?
No, and I think that's a great example to end on, because it, to make it clear, it's not as though due diligence is a rubber stamping exercise, is it? We're not just going to say that, oh, this is it, let's just find out why we should invest in this company. It is figuring out whether you should invest or not. And that, as you say, you can have a very, very good deal lead, a great team, and sometimes, you'll end up walking away. I think that feels important, but.
And Simon, just as before we close, I've seen in the chat that there were a lot of questions on term sheets, on shareholder agreements coming.
I think Sarah's going to come to that, because we have, I think we will have a session coming up on that. So. And
I did want to recommend something that a well-meaning VC friend just dropped on my desk. So this is just to put certain terms in your head, and written by a practitioner called his name is Brett Feld, and very entertaining, a run through all the technicalities of term sheet, shareholder agreement, different ways of financing. So I just wanted to say that if I saw a couple of people had questions about that, and that's a very approachable way of getting the basics.
Well, that's great. Thanks, Alex. And I quote Brad Feld all the time when I'm talking to some of the angels about financial projections, because, of course, he's on record as saying 100% of all financial projections from startups are wrong. So that's the super condensed version of his thesis, I think. But
yeah, pretty much.
Okay, well, look, that's been great. I'm going to hand back to Sarah at this point. Thank you so much, Jodie, Alex, Emma. It's great to see you as ever. And Sarah, are you there? Sarah's not there.
I'm here. I'm here.
Okay.
Do you want to bring the slides back up, please?
I shall do that.
So I want to add my thanks to our fantastic panel. Thank you very much, everyone. That was a really good discussion. Just a couple of words to wrap up. Simon, if you could move straight onto the last slide, please. Just wanted to suggest that everyone check out our website and social media for more information about Angel Academy if you're new to us. Applications are always open for founders. So if you're interested in pitching to our investors, please apply via the website. If you're interested in joining us as an investor, you can contact us through the website as well. But also just a reminder about our YouTube channel. We've got quite a lot of content piling up in there now on the various Investor Academy sessions that we've done. But there's also a specific recording of our partners at Kingsley Napley talking about the legal basics, so what to look for in term sheets and shareholder agreements. And there's also something on EIS and SEIS from our partners at Hayes McIntyre. And actually before every pitch event, we alternate doing a legal session and a EIS session. So if you're an angel investor and you're attending our next pitch event, you'll get plenty of chance to join those sessions live as well. That's it from me. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much for being an engaged audience and all your excellent questions. Apologies if we missed anyone, and I look forward to working on a deal team with you as an engaged deal team member or indeed lead investor. So see you all soon. Thanks very much.